A part of me does miss the days when we used to just bomb the ish out of these terrorists, no questions asked. But I understand it's easier said than done. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for being here on KCMO Talk Radio, now on the FM dial at 95.7. So yesterday afternoon, we learned that the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is going to continue another 2 days as hostages continue to get released. Now, you got to understand the political pressure that Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is under there in Israel. Of course, he's got hundreds of his fellow Israelis who are being held hostage by this Hamas terror group in Gaza, and he's got to figure out how to secure their release. You've got women and children, and of course, dozens have been released, another 11 yesterday. But this is a very tenuous situation and a difficult situation for him. And I'm sympathetic to it. It's easy for me to sit here in America and say, yeah, bomb the SOBs. Just to whatever you got to do to destroy Hamas, do. These are people's children. These are their spouses, their loved ones, their mothers, their fathers, that they're trying to get home alive. So I'm being sympathetic to that. And by the way, there's Americans who are still being held hostage over there. And their families here in America want them home as well. So it is a very difficult situation for Netanyahu. But now we learned yesterday from John Kirby that the ceasefire has been extended.
We welcome the announcement just a little bit ago, I think in the last hour or so, by Qatar, that the humanitarian pause in Gaza, now in its fourth day, will be extended for another 2 days through Thursday morning Israel time. This humanitarian pause has already brought a halt to the fighting, together with a surge of humanitarian assistance. Now, in order to extend the pause, Hamas has committed to releasing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We would, of course, hope to see the pause extended further, and that will depend upon Hamas continuing to release hostages.
So Hamas is trying to buy time here. That's all this is. Hamas has had a history of successfully using hostages in exchange for either time or getting back the people they wanted. You go back to 2011, Israel released over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners to secure the release of one of their soldiers who was kidnapped by Hamas and held hostage for 5 years. Now, that's a hell of a trade. And here's the thing. One of the prisoners released was a guy named Yahya Sinwar. It's a name I hadn't heard of till I was reading about him last night. And he is the Hamas leader in Gaza who served as the mastermind of the October 7th attacks last month. So it's always dicey when you're doing this hostage exchange. And by the way, right now, Israel is giving up 3 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for every one hostage they get back. And obviously, I mean, this is not one for one when we talk about quality of life, for lack of a better phrase. You're talking about innocent women and children who are just minding their own business in Israel compared to Palestinian prisoners who want to do nothing but kill Jews. It's not one for one. And by the way, Israel's given them up on a 3-to-1 ratio and continuing the ceasefire. So any talk about Israel committing genocide and Israel's just a bunch of power-hungry animals looking to, kill Palestinians, that's not true. It's just not. I mean, we all want peace for everybody. I think that's pretty well understood. We do, I do, you do. But then there's the way of the world, and there's a reason that you have these Palestinian prisoners under the watch of the Israelis. There's a reason for that. So this is now going to continue for another couple of days. And here in America, I think we're sitting here wondering, okay, well, how many Americans can we get back in all this? First off, how many are there? That's the one question I would have for John Kirby, who's the assistant to the Secretary of Defense. He's been kind of the face for a lot of this. And he was asked that very question yesterday. John Kirby, how many American hostages are you going to get them back as the ceasefire continues? And let's just put it this way. Not that this is a surprise to any of you, but if you are looking to have a lot of confidence in John Kirby running the show or in this administration at large, well, Kirby ain't giving that to you.
How many Americans are still being held hostage, and do you have proof of life?
We think the number is, it's less than 10, probably in the neighborhood of, about 8 to 9.
Oh, I see the difference.
I mean, I don't want to get gruesome here, but in the neighborhood of 8 to 9, like, are we talking about an arm or a leg missing here, buddy? Like, in the neighborhood of 8 to 9, less than 10, could be 8, could be 9.
I'm thinking 10's in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm thinking so as well. This guy is just something else. John, just tell us you don't have any damn idea. You don't have any blanket idea who's there, what's missing, who these Americans are. You got no clue. It's unbelievable.
But we don't necessarily have firm, solid information on each and every one of them.
Clearly.
What happened to the 2 American women who were with the...
Clearly, you don't have any idea. That was John Kirby yesterday afternoon during a press conference. There's nothing about the people in charge in this country that wreak confidence or strength. Not a single thing that they say gives you any confidence or certainly does not emit strength on the global stage. And that is part of the reason we find ourselves where we do today. Not the reason, but part of the reason. And now we're sitting here trying to figure out, okay, as an American government, what do we do? The one thing we should not be doing is dictating ceasefires to Israel. Israel knows what it's doing. I have confidence in Israel to do what is in its best interest, and I understand that Netanyahu is in a tough political spot. He does not want to give Hamas time to reload. And that's essentially what Hamas is buying itself. Hamas is buying itself time. And whether that is time to literally reload arms, whether it's time to rest, whether it's time to get reinforcements from Iran, whatever that looks like, I don't know. But they are buying themselves time. And it's a fine line, if you're Israel, between giving them the time that you feel you need to get people home alive, but then also giving them enough time to reload to try to get the reinforcements to kill more of your people. And that's something that when it comes to the people in charge in this country, I do not want them dictating. Because they have done nothing to prove to me on the world stage that they have the pulse of the moment, that they understand the best next move, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it is the Russia-Ukraine conflict, any of it, how to handle the Chinese, our own borders. They do not give you any confidence that they can lead the way on this. So I'd rather follow Netanyahu's lead. And if they want to go another 2 days on this ceasefire, okay. But if you go too long, you're asking for more trouble. And that's pretty obvious, or should be pretty obvious, to everybody involved. 913-408-7957 as we get it rolling on a Tuesday morning on KCMO. Thanks for being here. Coming up, we had just a couple of terrible incidents that took place yesterday. One in Overland Park, one right in downtown Kansas City. And we'll get to those and how they may tie together. Coming up next, Pete Mundo kicking it off on a Tuesday morning on KCMO 95.7 FM. Got two stories here locally yesterday that led the headlines, and neither of them are good. Neither of them are uplifting. I hate to say, I mean, trust me, we'll have fun today. But these two stories are in many ways larger issues that we have been dealing with across the metro. That's what they are. Let's start in Kansas City, Missouri on this one, where police are investigating the death of a boy under the age of 12 in downtown Kansas City. Now, this is in an alley. It was in an alley where this child was found near 10th and Grand about 10 a.m. yesterday. So right in the hub of downtown. I mean, that is a couple blocks north of T-Mobile Center. I'm sure that many of you, myself included, have used a parking garage right there at 10th and Grand. You get the UMB Bank On the west side of the street, you got parking garages right in the area. I mean, that is primo downtown. And at 10 a.m. yesterday, don't have any details yet, but the Kansas City Police Department says a boy under the age of 12 died from bodily trauma. It's awfully vague. I don't know what that means. But this stuff is happening now in major entertainment districts and business districts in and around Kansas City. And that's not to say it would be better if it happened somewhere else. But I'm just pointing out that one of the things when you have rampant crime and you can't control it, it permeates into parts of communities and the parts of cities that normally it would not be. That doesn't make any life more valuable than any other life. I'm just simply pointing out the obvious that we've stated for the better part of 3 years. That is, if you do not get crime under control, and it's been out of control for the better part of 3 years in this town, it is going to continue to happen, and it's going to get more common in places it traditionally wasn't. And 10th and Grand is not a place that you would typically find a child dying on the streets in an alleyway. It's not a place that would normally be happening, but now it is. And we've had more and more of these issues in the downtown area. By the way, has anyone asked the Kansas City Royals what they think about moving downtown lately? I mean, we've got several of these stories over the last just couple of months, it seems like, where you've had people getting shot, dying in the middle of downtown, like right outside of major corporations and major entertainment complexes. Whether it was yesterday at 10 a.m., you've had these examples, and we've talked about them in the last few weeks. If you're John Sherman and you're about to invest $1 billion with a B dollars, you tell me, is that where you want to be if you're John Sherman? So as soon as we learn more about this, we'll get it to you here on KCMO. But right now, it's obviously a death investigation. It has not yet been ruled a homicide. I will add that as well. And, of course, we'll give the old line that everyone on TV news gives. Anyone with information is asked to call 911 immediately or call the Kansas City Police Department tip hotline at 816-474-8477. He took it. There you go. John's given that number out once or twice on the news. Sad to say, but that's what we do. That number is now ingrained in probably many Kansas Cityans' minds. Can you say it off the top of your head, by the way, John?
816-474-8477.
All right.
Or TIPS.
TIPS.
We used to do the TIPS, but it takes so long now to look at that and do it. So
yeah.
8477.
That's the better way to do it. 8477. There's also a reward of up to $25,000 for information provided to tips, which leads to an arrest in this case. This is just terrible stuff. And the alleyway I'm looking at here on KCTV5, I mean, it's right off of 10th Street, and it's the fact that you had a child dealing with some type of bodily trauma being found near death and then ending up dying in this alleyway right at 10th and Grand is just, I mean, it just makes your skin crawl is what it does. So that was in Kansas City. And then in Overland Park yesterday, you had a police chase that leaves 5 injured in a car crash in Overland Park. The crash happened at 119th and Blue Valley Parkway, and this stemmed from 3 people who were suspected of stealing from a TJ Maxx near 159th and US 69 Highway. So, hold on. First off, TJ Maxx? Are you kidding me?
I thought, no, maybe I shouldn't say anything.
No, please.
I mean, you're not going for high-ticket
Maxx?
items, are you?
No.
Are you thinking, hey, I'll get away with this? I'm taking crap from TJ Maxx.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't want to make light of this because, someone's in critical condition. But you are willing to allegedly steal from a TJ Maxx and engage in a high-speed car chase up 69 Highway for stuff you took from TJ freaking Maxx? These are the dumbest criminals in the history of Kansas, as far as I can tell. We're going to go to TJ Maxx. What'd you steal? $50 that you could fill your trunk up at TJ Maxx for $50. Unbelievable. I mean, in Biden's America, maybe it's 65.
Come on, man.
But either way, you get the point. Holy cow. So 3 people allegedly steal from TJ Maxx and they lead police on a pursuit heading north on 69 Highway. During the chase, the vehicle ran through a red light at 119th and Blue Valley Parkway, hitting another vehicle. And two of the suspects were taken to the hospital in serious condition. Third suspect refused treatment and is in custody. But you had somebody innocent that was obviously hit in this case, and they are also in the hospital dealing with injuries. If you haven't seen the pictures of the car crash, I mean, it is nasty. The two vehicles were mangled. Not a good situation. So you combine this story in Overland Park with a story from a couple of weeks ago where officers tried to stop shoplifters at Oak Park Mall. And that led to one of those suspects grabbing a cop's gun and firing a shot. A shot that, by the way, nearly hit a child at Oak Park Mall. That information came out after the fact. The story was kind of old news when it came out, but a child was nearly hit by that gun in Oak Park Mall when the suspected thief took a cop's gun and fired it. And these are two terrible stories in Overland Park in the span of just a couple of weeks. So I know we have this idyllic view of Overland Park, and don't get me wrong, it's still a great place to live. There's many of you listening that obviously live in Overland Park. But there also are issues that are becoming more prevalent and more obvious by the day. And it seems like many in city leadership are whistling past the graveyard and too busy patting themselves in the back saying, look at what a great job we're doing here. Next on KCMO after the news, I told you this was going to happen with the Chiefs kid with the headgear, and it happened yesterday. I'll explain. He's now getting attacked next. Woo! Good morning. Welcome in. Ride it there, Mark. How you doing there, John? You living good there, my man?
Oh, I was relishing a comment you made just prior to airtime.
Oh, I can't say
I didn't
it.
know if we wanted to.
No, I can't. I can't repeat it.
Well, I know some of the keyboard warriors that are commenting in all caps, and they're afraid of self-checkout things, too. So,
hey,
you know.
I want to go back and forth. I want to have spirited conversations on this show at 913-408-7957. We'll keep doing it all morning long on KCMO. It's been a lively first hour. And, hey, don't forget about Tirade Tuesday coming up at 8:35. You want to get it off your chest? I'm expecting some incredible tirades today in the wake of Thanksgiving. I know some of you were stuck with your Uncle Larry in Prairie Village, and you just got to get it off your chest. You were sitting there at the Thanksgiving table, and you were stuck next to Aunt Sally, and she was just chewing your ear off about what a great job Grandpa's doing,
Boom, boom, boom.
and you got to get it off your chest. By the way, you know how they have kids' tables at Thanksgiving dinner? You know, everyone has a kids' table, right? Well, I saw this go viral on social media over the weekend. Someone had a Democrats table, and they just put all the Dems at the same table. And they gave them, like, little kids' plates and little kids' silverware and the whole thing. I was like, oh, that's pretty creative. So by now, yesterday I was telling you how I've got the house to myself here. Well, I shouldn't say to myself. Woody's kicking it with me. So it's me and the dog, the 11-year-old Havanese, and we're just living life these last few days. The girls are with our family. I've got my sister-in-law getting married on Friday. So going to be out Friday, got a big wedding day, and I'm looking forward to it. But I've been sitting in my own thoughts the last couple of days at home. It's kind of weird. You know, usually I get home and I open our garage door, and sometimes I can hear, usually it's Chloe, but I can hear the girls from the driveway. Always I hear them from the garage, but they're very loud. And I don't know where that comes from. But I can hear them through the walls of the house. And it just, it sounds like and then the dog's barking, so it sounds like some combination of like World War III starting and just a lot of noise. But now, the last couple of days, it's just like, it's too quiet around here. It's too quiet around here. What's going on? So yesterday I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's well older than me. He's got kids into his 20s. And he told me how he was sick for the last 4 days of the holiday. He's like, yeah, I didn't even end up going anywhere. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. He goes, yeah, it was actually great. He was sick. He got COVID for the first time. And, he's fine now, but he was sick for a few days, didn't want to go out, didn't want to go to his girlfriend's place or anything like that. So he's like, yeah, I just kind of sat home and watched a lot of football. I'm like, wow. And then I told him about my weekend and how I also had peace and quiet in this house for the first time in at least 2.5 years since our second one was born. And don't get me wrong, I miss them and the whole thing. But when you sit there in your own thoughts and you sit there and the house is quiet, you start kind of going through a litany of ideas. And I'm thinking about this yesterday. As much as I'm enjoying a couple of days of peace and quiet, I would never change anything I've done. Like some people, and I'm hearing, and obviously the data is showing this, the younger generation right now that's Gen Z, and I guess younger millennials, are obviously not having children. We know the birth rate has gone in the toilet, and there's a lot of reasons for that. People are getting married later. They're, still living in mom's basement. They're trying to pay off student loans. It's impossible to buy a house. I mean, there's a lot of reasons culturally, societally, this is happening. The dating apps are, for the most part, a complete and utter failure. I know people have had success on them. I know a lot of people who have met on them. Heck, my sister-in-law met her fiance on there. So I know there's some success. But remember, the dating apps don't actually want you to find somebody. They're better off with you staying on their app into eternity. That's the business model. They're not actually, as Bill O'Reilly would say, they're not actually looking out for you. They're looking out for themselves. And they're better off with single people all over the app, never actually finding true love. I know many of you have made it work, but I'm just saying their algorithms secretly don't want that. So as much as I'm enjoying the peace and quiet, the reason I'm enjoying it so much is because I know what it's like to have the chaos. There are so many things that, before you have kids, you take for granted. Even if you're married, before you have kids, basically doing, within reason, whatever you want, whenever you want. I remember, it would have been 7-8 years ago, before we moved out here, we were still... I lived in Oklahoma for 2 years. We went to New York for 5 years, was doing stuff at Fox News and CBS, and then we came out here 5.5, 6 years ago now. I remember the summer of 2016, we had been to a Springsteen concert. In case you don't know, I'm a huge fan. I know, he's a liberal. Okay, fine. I like the music. But we went to a concert of his, summer of 16. And then the next week, he was doing another show. And he was on this tear where he was doing 4-hour shows, no interruptions, 65 years old, phenomenal shows. And we decided the day of to go to the second show in a week. And I remember saying, hey, we were thinking about kids at that point, and I said, there's going to be a time in our lives when we literally can't do this. And that time is going to last for several years. So we did it, and I have no regrets, and it was a 4-hour and 2-minute show. It was the longest show he had ever done. We were on the floor. It was amazing. So now as I sit here and I have these couple of days to myself, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is great. Obviously, I miss them. But one of the reasons it's great is because you know what it's like to have and embrace the chaos every single day with, by the way, no end in sight. That's what makes it great. It wouldn't be this great if I didn't have kids, because I wouldn't know how great it could be. And that's what people who don't experience that, who choose not to have children, don't get. They have this vision in their minds of, well, I don't want to have any of those suckers running around and ruining my freedom and ruining my life, and I can't do what I want anymore, and me. And my buddy I was talking to yesterday said his 2 kids, one is married, both in their 20s, they're like, hey, Dad, you're never having grandkids. Your grandkids are going to be the dogs that we've got. And he's like, they just don't want to be bothered. And that saddens me. Because part of the reason I've enjoyed the peace and quiet the last 2 days is because I know and I experience every single day what it's normally like. And sometimes it takes that level of chaos and embracing that level of chaos to appreciate the little things. To suddenly be sitting on your couch with your dog next to you, looking around, not seeing anybody, and not hearing any noises, and being like, wow, this is pretty fantastic. I don't want it forever. I mean, even, by today, I'm probably going to be like, okay, I'll embrace some of the chaos again, and I'll be back to it tomorrow night. So, it's going to be here before I know it. So I'm trying to soak it all up, but I'm also trying to take a step back as I sit in my own thoughts for these last couple of days and understand why I appreciate it as much as I do. And I think that's important because that's what, in many ways, parenting is. Delayed gratification. You have these little kids, right? You got to literally do everything for them. You got to change diapers. They're peeing in your face. You're cleaning up poop, the whole thing. But you hope that you make a 20 to 30-year bet that over time, you raise some damn good kids, you have your offspring, and you've got a legacy. And that legacy is going to be worth more than whatever little, emblem you get from your Fortune 500 company after you sacrifice 30 years of your life to them. I promise you that what you're seeing in your own kids is going to be worth a hell of a lot more than some tie you're going to get from your corporation after you retire after 35 years. Coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio. This was hysterical. I saw this yesterday from one of our local media outlets. And the headline was this: Midwest weather experts want to talk about climate change, but they face pushback and threats. Would you stop threatening the weather people around the Midwest already? Jeez. It is comical. It is satirical. But no, it's a real article from one of our local Joko media outlet. I'll tell you which one next. Wow. Love Bill O'Reilly, but he's dead wrong on that one. I got a couple pairs of these. They're like dress shoes, but they have the white soles, so they kind of have that sneaker feel and look to them. And you see them a lot now on TV. I can't stand the idea. I'm already dreading wearing real dress shoes to the wedding I have to go to later this week. Bill is way off base on that. I mean, Bill, God bless him, he's a friend. I'll tell him this next time I see him. But if you want to wear real dress shoes, more power to you. But there is nothing less comfortable than real dress shoes, especially when there's better options. And by the way, they look good. I don't know what he's talking about. Don't wear sneakers on TV. Gosh, Bill. I mean, what are you wearing? A pair of tighty-whities that are 2 sizes too small as well? I mean, come on, man. I love you. But that sounds terrible. We've come a long way when it comes to dress shoes. They're not nearly what they used to be. Just uncomfortable. Your feet hurt. Now they're nice. They're comfy. They're cozy, and they look good. It's a win-win, John.
Footwear, it's how you signal you're an American across the world.
Well, that's true.
It was funny when I was in Paris. It's like, it's like, you guys seem to know who's American and who's not. And I see people, and everybody's got different styles, and I'm like, how do you know? They just point down, they look. And I'm like, every French person has on leather shoes. I'm like, oh.
Well, keep those leather shoes. I've got no interest in them.
Just keep them right there.
Please, leave them. Mm-hmm. KCUR. Let's talk about these clowns. Your national panhandler radio station here in town. Are they over there begging for money yet today? Their news anchors like to troll me on social media. I'm like, don't you guys work? And then I realized they work for the government, so the answer is obviously no. They don't work. KCUR, I was laughing to myself reading this last night. It was pretty entertaining because they actually think this is like a serious story. Headline: Midwest weather experts want to talk about climate change, but they face pushback and threats.
From ...
Well, obviously
Details.
rubes like us. Here's how the article notes starts. Meteorologists and climatologists often have a tough job explaining climate change to the public because you're all so stupid. I mean, talk about talking down to just regular folks, especially in places where audiences may be more skeptical of the science. The science, the settled science. The same people who are telling you that you better get the jab because if not, you're going to kill grandma are suddenly big on the science. And the science can never change, right? No, the very definition of science is that it's always changing. They start off with the story. Chris Glonger is his name. I might refer to him as Chris Schlonger, but Chris Gonger is his name. And Chris was excited to start his new job, they write, at KCCI up in Des Moines. Moved to Iowa in 2021. He came from Boston to connect the dots between weather and climate change trends. Well, wait, dude.
You're going the wrong way, brother.
Yeah, well, you were brought to a TV station to connect the dots between weather and climate change trends? No, I want to know if it's going to snow tomorrow. I want to know if a tornado's coming in this part of the world. I'm not there to listen to your rants or your soliloquies on climate change trends on a 90-second weather forecast. Come down here, watch some of the best in Kansas City do it, whether it was Mike Thompson, who's now in the Kansas Senate. Brian Busby does a good job. I was watching the guy last night on Fox 4. I think his name, Joe, right? Joe's his name on Fox 4. But I see these guys, and I'm like, just give me the weather forecast. No one's hiring you to be a professor on local news. So he says here at a KCUR, quote, I expected pushback. I just didn't expect the magnitude and how quickly it went off the rails. At first, the negative feedback was fairly standard. Schlanger came to Iowa with more than 15 years of experience. Mark just loves the sophomoric jokes. He's just sitting in there laughing like a school kid.
Great name.
Thank you very much there, Mark. This was just for you, by the way. I try to get Mark going here before 7:30 on a Tuesday. He came to Iowa with more than 15 years of experience in TV meteorology and had launched a weekly series on climate change, which ran in Boston and won a regional Emmy. Wow, yeah, the awards. That's definitely where you find the winners and the losers. He says it was pretty standard feedback, negative feedback. People telling me I was politicizing the weather and that I was a puppet of the left. But then in the summer of 22, he said, he started getting a steady flow of harassing emails. One email to him said that we conservative Iowans would like to give you an Iowa welcome you will never forget. That guy was eventually charged with third-degree harassment, pled guilty, and was fined $150. So eventually, this weatherman, Schlanger, he went back to Boston after 2 years in Iowa. And he took a consulting job focusing on climate solutions. Well, that sounds like a good job for him. I'm happy that he's doing that gig. That's probably what he should be doing, not preaching climate change in Des Moines on local TV where people are simply looking for the weather forecast tomorrow.
Just trying to grow some corn.
That's all they're doing. Very simple concept, my man. And you can't get it right. So the article goes on to talk about other people as well and how climate change is real and how most people think it's happening. And we've got to make sure that our local meteorologists are doing their jobs. Yes, climate change is happening. That's indisputable. The question is not about climate change happening. The question is how much of it is man-made, and telling me that I can't fly in an airplane and telling me that I better drive an EV and not the pickup truck, because if not, I'm going to contribute to the polar bears not having a place to live, is where people get annoyed. That's where they've lost their cool. And I'm not defending anyone harassing a local meteorologist. I'm just saying, if you want to be a climate consultant, fine. Go make a lot of money with a think tank. But when it comes to being a local weatherman, just give the damn weather for the next 7 days. That's all we're looking for. Well, if you're as disgusted by these new Kansas license plates as I am, and, I mean, if you're a Kansan, you should be, because they look like they're straight out of Mizzou. They're white, they're black and they're yellow. It is just beyond ugly. There's no character to them at all. And someone thought that it was a good idea to roll these license plates out.
I've heard some people say they're Wichita State colors, which is also true, I guess.
It's fine, but no offense
Iowa
to
Hawkeyes, Pittsburgh Steelers, Hamilton Tiger Cats, Missouri.
My mom said it did look like Pittsburgh Steelers to her.
Well, in this region, those two colors mean one thing, and that's Mizzou. No offense, Wichita State, but when the population center for the state is up here and everyone up here associates those colors with Mizzou, then you screwed up. Especially when you had a fine license plate to begin with. I don't know. It seems like states, I mean, it's just willy-nilly now. They change these things, it feels like every couple of years. It's ridiculous. But I got some good news. There is a bill, and I'm hearing this from folks in Topeka. Now, of course, they're not in session right now. They will be coming up in the new year. But everyone agrees on a bipartisan basis it's an awful-looking license plate. And there are bills that are going to be coming in the new legislative session. I don't know what exactly the bills are going to say, but everyone agrees that that license plate cannot continue. And it is hideous. And that is Republicans and that is Democrats who all agree on this. There's not much they agree on in Topeka, but if we can get bipartisanship on the license plate issue, sign me up, John. Woo! I love it.
Well, I don't know, Pete. You're going to make it harder to copy those things for illegal immigrants to just have some license plates.
Yeah, you're right. Well,
I mean, we do things with money. You're trying to make it so that you can't copy it. And now this is like the simplest thing that you absolutely could forfeit.
I'm trying to get on the guy who's kind of in charge of the license plates in the state to come on the show and at least explain. I'm not going to come on here and knock the guy because I don't know how much of it is him. But I'm trying to get him on the show to at least explain how they came up with this thing. But I kind of got the runaround yesterday.
Yeah.
I got the old, well, you got to talk to this guy. Who's got to talk to that guy.
This is where my communications degree comes in. One of the first things I learned in physical print is, what colors are easy to read off of others. A black and white combo, oddly enough, was one that's hard to read for people.
Well, this is black and yellow, so I don't know what that means.
Yeah, okay, but that's enough. What I meant to say was the black and yellow color is hard on the eyes, although they've made it big block printing. I mean, are they trying to make this easy for visual? Because I thought we had electronic tagging now.
Well, my understanding is it's easier for the electronic tagging. These colors. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I've read.
We're going to need you to wear your barcode right on your wrist today, please. Right?
That's right. You got to plaster it on your forehead when you get on, K10 or K7 or I-70. You wear the barcode right on your forehead. That way, when you go to the K-State game, they know who you are. They know where you are.
They got you. See you coming.
Yeah, that's right. It is hideous. But the good news is, apparently, everyone hates it, and they're going to try to nip this thing in the bud early in the legislative session. I don't care if they don't do anything else during the legislative session in Topeka. Get rid of the damn license plates. That's all we're asking on a bipartisan basis. We can all be on the same page on that much. All right. Meantime, we are monitoring what is going on the world stage. The ceasefire is now continuing for a couple more days between Hamas and Israel. And we know that yesterday, Hamas sent 11 hostages back to Israel. We know there's still about 10 Americans who are being held hostage by Hamas, which we don't talk enough about. We've got 10 Americans who have been held for almost 2 months by the worst terrorist organization on the planet right now. And, Biden's doing Black Friday shopping and wishing you a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you all. I hope you enjoyed it.
It's like that was the guy over the weekend. Who didn't enjoy it, Joe? 10 Americans who are being held hostage by Hamas. Can we get them back, please? Sooner rather than later? So John Kirby, a spokesman for the Department of Defense, was asked this yesterday about if there is a danger, and the answer is yes, to allowing the ceasefire to go on for too long.
All along you've been very clear about concerns that a broader ceasefire would only benefit Hamas. Sullivan was pretty clear yesterday in saying that, Hamas has been able to gain some benefit from this. How concerned are you that the longer this truce lasts, now 6 days, that Hamas will benefit? And how do you weigh that?
It's a real risk. You have to expect a group like Hamas, a terrorist group, which clearly doesn't abide by laws of war, will try to take advantage of any pause in the fighting for their own benefit. So we're watching that closely, as well as our Israeli counterparts. You can bet that they're watching that closely.
Okay. He admits there's a risk to allowing the ceasefire to go on for too long. And there is. Now, this is not as black. I want it to be black and white. Like, I want to just say bomb the you-know-what out of these SOBs, these awful terrorists. In Gaza, of course, Hamas being the terrorist organization that went ahead with the October 7th attacks and obviously is holding hostage hundreds of Israelis and about a dozen Americans right now. But I'm also sympathetic to the reality of Israelis wanting to see their wives, their children, their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their fathers alive. So I'm sympathetic to that. It's not as black and white as I want it to be because we all want the terrorists, frankly, to be dead. They don't deserve to be alive. The terrorists, that's what we're talking about here. The people that committed these atrocities almost 2 months ago now. But there's no doubt Hamas is not agreeing to a ceasefire. Hamas is not agreeing to allowing these hostages free if it wasn't beneficial to them. And that's the danger of all this. Opening up the door to negotiations with terrorists does present risks. And frankly, it's something that Israel has done in the past. And they did this almost over 10 years ago now. they released over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners to secure the release of one Israeli soldier. And one of those Palestinian prisoners released was the guy who ended up being the mastermind for October 7th. So this does not come without serious risk. And right now, they're releasing 3 Palestinian prisoners for every one Israeli. But they're doing what they have to do to get their people back. But Israel should not be dictated by America how long a ceasefire should go on because of, woke college kids at Harvard. That's not how this policy should go. Coming up next on KCMO, speaking of our schools, there is a school that is offering you, if you are a certain skin color, to take courses with teachers of that same skin color. Is that appropriate? We'll get to it next. What a mess. Good morning. We got an hour to go. Ray Stevens, of course, will be here at 10 o'clock on 95.7 FM KCMO. What an absolute mess the Royals and Jackson County have on their hands. The Royals were supposed to tell us at the end of September where their future home was going to be. We are now at the end of November, and there is nothing to suggest that the Royals are any closer to figuring out where they'd like to play baseball next. Of course, most of us would say they got a pretty damn good place right now to play baseball, but not good enough.
We don't count.
Yeah, of course. So now the questions are, do they stay in Jackson County? Do they look at the East Village site? Do they look at the new site that's popped up, the one at the old Kansas City Star Printing Press building on the south side of the loop? There is the North Kansas City option that has been talked a lot about. But one thing we can all agree on, everybody involved looks bad, from the county to the team and every middleman in between. The most recent story comes from Fox 4 and Jonathan Ketz, who is doing a really good job on covering this story. And here's the story. Fox 4 obtained a new document showing a corrected number for how much a new Royal Stadium would cost Jackson County over a 40-year time period. You may recall there was a number that leaked to the media a few weeks ago. It was in October, and it leaked that a new Royal Stadium could cost the county as much as $6.4 billion. Now, that would be over the cost of a 40-year sales tax agreement, which the Royals apparently want. We don't really know. The Royals don't really talk about what they're asking the taxpayer for. But if you were to extrapolate that over a 40-year period, you'd be looking at about $6.4 billion. That was the number we were told in a document that was leaked to the media last month. Well, now that corrected number is $5.1 billion. So it was a $1.28 billion error. Just a rounding error, right? Just off by $1.3 billion. What's the big deal?
Well, Tyler Technologies drove by the East Village and took a picture.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's good. So here's Jonathan Ketz, Fox 4, with his report from last night.
We did get reaction, though, and an admittance from the county executive's office that there was an error in that document that was leaked last month that everybody reported on, saying that the most a new Royal Stadium could cost over 40 years to Jackson County would be $6.4 billion.
It was just a formula error. That's all it was. It doesn't change anything about the magnitude of what we're still spending a lot of resources for 40 years on those two facilities.
That was Troy Schulte. He's the county administrator. He used to be the city manager in Kansas City, and he did a good job. I think Troy's a good guy. But to downplay a $1.3 billion mistake as a rounding error, what was his verbatim again? But he called it, just a formula error is what he called it.
Formulaic, yeah.
Formulaic error. Nah, dude, you don't miss out by $1.3 billion and then get to be like, just a formula error. What about you going to work today? You tell your boss you did a $1.3 billion error in your formula. How's that going to go?
Guess how much I sold today.
Yeah. The door's that way, all right? Don't come back. Walk out, give us your pass, and see you never. That's how that would go. But when you're in government, $1.3 billion here, $1.3 billion there, and suddenly we got real money. That's how it goes. Here's more from Jonathan Ketz.
Document Fox 4 obtained Monday shows a corrected number on how much a new Royal Stadium could cost over 40 years. The corrected number, $5.1 billion on the high end, not $6.4. That error difference between that and the original document, $1.2 billion.
Pretty basic addition there that they needed to figure out.
We talked about the document with Manny Abarca before he left the courthouse Monday.
I think these numbers were inflated to scare voters. I think that's part of, again, why the Stadium Committee needs to exist, to create the realities of what is fact and what is fiction.
Abarca says it may help the Chiefs to start saying what kind of renovation they would want at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium.
I've been in some pretty interesting conversations that make me believe that there are other opportunities for them to come forward, and the voters deserve to know what that may be. We deserve to know what that may be so that we can weigh these options. And as quickly as they're asking us to consider these timelines, we should know sooner rather than later.
That sounds like Kansas.
Certainly an option.
That was Manny Abarca, county administrator, mentioning that Kansas might now be on the table. I don't know if that's true. Listen, I think the politics of this need to be noted. Manny Abarca doesn't like Frank White. Manny Abarca wants to be Frank White. Manny Abarca wants Frank White's job as county executive. So don't discount the politics and all this. Let's just put that out there in the open. That being said, I believe this dysfunction and this chaos from the county, the Royals secretly like. Now you're saying, why would the Royals want the county to look like a bunch of inept idiots? Well, because it doesn't make them look like inept idiots, or it makes them look like less inept idiots. That's what it does. And rather than the team coming off as greedy in this, which is going to happen anytime a professional team says to the taxpayer, especially in this climate, hey, can we get another, fill in the blank, hundreds of millions of dollars? They get to say, boy, that county doesn't know what the heck it's doing. They can't get their act together, John. That's what the team gets to say now.
Well, you may be right about that, because I'm going back to, if I'm the city, I'm like, call me when you figure it out. You brought it up.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't say, hey, you want a new stadium?
This was your idea.
You created this mess.
They did.
Absolutely.
But now they get to kind of hide behind.
Else is even more inept.
Yes, they get to hide behind the ineptitude of the county.
Boy, that was lucky, wasn't it?
They felt, well, they knew who they were dealing with, too.
Sure.
One of the great things about operating in Jackson County is, your incompetency will be topped by the county itself. The county will have no problem topping you in ineptitude and incompetency. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So I believe the Royals are kind of kicking their feet up and saying this buys us more time. The county's got $1.3 billion in rounding errors. They can come out and say, well, we're still working through some options, and the county really doesn't know what it's doing either. So in the best interest of everybody, we're going to take a step back and, enjoy the holidays, and we'll tell you how much money of yours we want come the new year. But remember, the timeline's coming in hot. I want to say it's around January 20th, give or take, where if the Royals want something on the ballot in April for a sales tax, either an extension in Jackson County or, say, a new sales tax in Clay County if they go north, the deadline is mid to late January to file to have something on the ballot. And they do not want to put something on the ballot I don't think they want to put something on the ballot in August, which they could do that as well, because there's going to be primaries in August for, Missouri governor's race and things like that. Also presidential primaries if they're still around.
Can't have too many people going to the polls.
They don't want too many people going to the polls. And they sure as hell don't want to do it in November.
Nobody's going to vote then.
Yeah, they do not want this thing on the ballot in November of a presidential year. That would be suicide for the Royals. So if they don't get something on the ballot by January, they basically have to wait a whole year to get it on the April 2025 ballot. And honestly, if I was them, I know that they don't want to wait. I would wait. I would make a bet that inflation will subside, and I'm not saying it will, but you do not want to be asking taxpayers as a 100-loss team in this city for more money right now. You hope that the team gets better. That buys you some goodwill. You hope that inflation subsides, and you can still get your stadium up wherever you put it by the end of your lease, which let's not forget runs through 2031 out at the Truman Sports Complex. You still have then 5 or 6 years to build a stadium, which you can do. I know Sherman wants this thing up sooner rather than later, but he's better off waiting a year than being completely embarrassed, which is what he will be if this thing goes to a ballot in Clay or Jackson early next year, and people are like, screw this. The team stinks, and I'm getting screwed by the county on the assessments, and I'm getting screwed by Bidenomics. I am not voting for this stadium right now.
Right, and to your point, you miss the early deadline here and you go into August or November, then at that point the Chiefs better be the biggest fans for a Chiefs Super Bowl championship.
Yes.
Because then the Chiefs could come out at any point there and ask for something.
Yeah.
Just something.
Yeah. Well,
people will approve that.
They will. The Chiefs could ask for whatever the heck they want, and both sides of the state line would say, sure.
Royals are just kind of hoping to coattail it right now, right?
Absolutely, which is another reason why they want to just be on the ballot with the Chiefs if they're in Jackson County. That is imperative that they stay on a ballot with the Chiefs. It cannot be two separate questions. It can't. They should have their own. They want to have a question that is combined with the Chiefs. If not, they are taking a major risk. 913-4087-957. As we roll through the 9 o'clock hour on KCMO Talk Radio. Oh, man. As we get to the bottom of the hour, our caller of the day is going to be coming up. And it was a disagreeable caller. We had a good time on this. But next, the person who is in charge of the education department made one of the biggest screw-ups you will ever hear. We'll get to it next. Oh, this is a gem. Good morning, 9:20 on a Tuesday, chilly Tuesday morning across Kansas City. I just can't get enough. I haven't played it yet this morning. It's been so busy. We've had a lot of good different topics to hit on. But this is all-time facepalm emoji from Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. And it's just started to go viral in the last 24 hours. It was at a meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at the 2023 winter meeting for the Western Governors Association. And it has gotten tens of millions of views on social media, if you haven't seen this comment from Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. He butchered one of Ronald Reagan's more famous quotes in an all-time facepalm. And I love it because it says a lot about this guy as the education secretary. We've got a failing public school system, and it's no surprise that this is the guy in charge with the way he butchers this Ronald Reagan quote.
You know, we're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help. There are resources there, there's technical assistance there, and there's a playbook that could support the work you're doing. Count on us as a partner in this. Our students are waiting. Thank you.
Oh, my gosh. That is
such a cute soundbite.
Miguel Cardona, Education Secretary, butchering the Reagan quote. He goes, I think it was President Reagan who said, we're from the government and we're here to help. Here's the actual quote from Ronald Reagan, who's got to be rolling around in his grave right now. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That's the Reagan quote. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language. And Miguel Cardona's like, yeah, I think it was Reagan who said, we're from the government and we're here to help. I mean, that is just, yes, hammer that civility bell for me. And this is the guy who is in charge of the education system in this country. It is no secret we're going to hell in a handbasket when that's the guy in charge. You know, in the words of Miguel Cardona, it's like Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will be judged by the color of their skin and not by the content of their character. You see what I did there? I completely reversed the actual quote, which is what Miguel Cardona did with Ronald Reagan. Or as Abe Lincoln famously said, we have as all will agree, an unequal government where every man does not have a right to be equal with every other man. That's how Miguel Cardona would famously screw up one of Abe Lincoln's great quotes. Or, you could really screw up FDR's most famous quote. The last thing we have to fear is fear itself. That works as well. I'm sure there's others I could think of off the top of my head, but that is just too good to be true. You wonder why we have a failing public education system, and I say this as somebody who went to public school K through 12, and then you get Miguel Cardona.
We're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help. There are resources there. There's technical assistance there. And
we're from the government and we're here to help. That's the last thing Reagan wanted.
I got a couple more if he wants to hear them.
Oh, jeez. Unbelievable. Now, on a serious note, we are monitoring what is going on overseas. We have the ceasefire that's been extended for 2 more days between Israel and Hamas. That is the lead national story, and not national, global story of the day. It was a 4-day ceasefire. Now it's a 6-day ceasefire. So we'll see how many hostages Israel can get back. It would be great if we'd have some American hostages coming back as well. But here's the thing. We don't even know how many American hostages Hamas has right now. John Kirby, we've just got the cream of the crop running this country, don't we?
Come on, man.
John Kirby, the Assistant Secretary of Defense, had a press conference yesterday. He was asked that very question. How many Americans are in the hands of the worst terrorists on planet Earth right now? And John Kirby's...
How many Americans are still being held hostage, and do you have proof of life?
We think the number is, it's less than 10, probably in the neighborhood of, about 8 to 9.
Are we counting all the limbs there, John? What are we doing? It's kind of like, Claire and I, we've been playing with a deck of cards lately, and I'll just split the deck of cards in half, 26 each, and we'll just play high card. So we're just playing high card. And sometimes she'll want to guess my card. And that's kind of the conversation we have. She'll say, do you have a 10? And I'll say, no, it's not quite a 10. And she'll go, a 2? And I'm like, no, it's like between an 8 and a 9. I do that with my 5-year-old. I have that exact conversation as we play high card with a deck of cards. And John Kirby is asked, how many Americans are being held hostage by Hamas? Well, somewhere in the ballpark of 10, really in the range of like 8 to 9, give or take 1 or 2 maybe. It's just, it is bad. It is really bad. And the ceasefire has been extended, and all John Kirby can say is, well, we hope we got some Americans coming back.
Any possibility that Americans will be among the 20 that we release over the next few days?
Well, we certainly hope so. We're going to watch this very, very closely. We're certainly hoping that another batch of hostages gets released today as part of it.
Yeah, we hope these guys from Hamas, woke up on the right side of the bed today. That's our hope. We hope they're kind of in a good mood and they're not looking to slaughter people today. So we're hopeful. We're keeping our chin up.
4th and final day of the original agreement. We're going to be watching closely to see if any Americans are in that group. As it has come out.
Watching closely to see if any Americans are in that group. It'll be pretty obvious when the hostages are handed over to Israel whether or not there's Americans in that group. It's really simple. This is right out of Obama's playbook. Try to kiss the ass of terrorists and hope that they'll be nice to you. It doesn't work. It never has worked. Every time it's been tried, it has failed. And they don't get it. The definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's exactly what they're doing. And in the meantime, 10 Americans are over there holding out hope that they'll come home alive. It might be 8 or 9. Who knows? And I'm sure some are saying, who cares? It's sad.